सर्वस्य चाहं सन्निविष्टो मत्ता स्मृतिर्ज्ञानमपोहनं च मत्ता स्मृतिर्ज्ञानमपोहनं च वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यो वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यो वेदान्तकृद्वेदविदेव चाहं वेदान्तकृद्वेदविदेव चाहं सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टो सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टो मत्ता स्मृतिर्ज्ञानमपोहनं च मत्ता स्मृतिर्ज्ञानमपोहनं च वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यो वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यो वेदान्तकृद्वेदविदेव चाहं वेदान्तकृद्वेदविदेव चाहं. Would anyone like to recite? सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टो सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टो मत्ता स्मृतिर्ज्ञानमपोहनं च मत्ता स्मृतिर्ज्ञानमपोहनं च वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यो वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यो वेदान्तकृद्वेदविदेव चाहं वेदान्तकृद्वेदविदेव चाहं. Any Mataji's? सर्वस्य चाहं हृदि सन्निविष्टो मत्ता स्मृतिर्ज्ञानमपोहनं च वेदैश्च सर्वैरहमेव वेद्यो वेदान्तकृद्वेदविदेव चाहम्. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on to the synonyms. Sarvasya. Sarvasya. Of all living beings. Of all living beings. Cha. Cha. And. Aham. Aham. I. Hridi. Hridi. In the heart. In the heart. Sannivishtaha. Sannivishtaha. Situated. Situated. Mattaha. Mattaha. From me. From me. Smriti. Smriti. Remembrance. Remembrance. Jnanam. Jnanam. Knowledge. Knowledge. Apohanam. Apohanam. Forgetfulness. Forgetfulness. Cha. Cha. And. Vede. Vede. By the Vedas. By the Vedas. Cha. Cha. Also. Also. Sarve. Sarve. All. All. Aham. Aham. I am. I am. Eva. Eva. Certainly. Certainly. Vedya. Vedya. Knowable. Knowable. Vedantakrit. Vedantakrit. The compiler of the Vedanta. The compiler of the Vedanta. Vedavit. Vedavit. The knower of the Vedas. The knower of the Vedas. Eva. Eva. Certainly. Certainly. Cha. Cha. And. Aham. Aham. I. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I am situated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Purport. The Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from Him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. Therefore, he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him. And he forgets also about his past life. Thus, the Lord is not only all-pervading, he is localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruit of results. He is worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well. The Vedas give the right direction to people so that they can properly mold their lives and come back to Godhead, back to home. The Vedas offer knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and Krishna in his incarnation as Vyasadeva is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra. The commentation on the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasadeva in the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the real understanding of the Vedanta Sutra. The Supreme Lord is so full that for the deliverance of the conditioned soul, he is the supplier and digester of foodstuffs, the witness of his activity, and the giver of knowledge in the form of the Vedas. As the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the teacher of the Bhagavad Gita, he is worshipable by the conditioned soul. Thus, God is all good. God is all merciful. Anta pravishta shashta jananam. The living entity forgets as soon as he quits his present body, but he begins his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his last life. So not only does the living entity enjoy or suffer in this world, according to the dictation from the Supreme Lord, situated locally in the heart, but he receives the opportunity to understand the Vedas from him. If one is serious about understanding the Vedic knowledge, then Krishna gives the required intelligence. Why does he present the Vedic knowledge for understanding? Because the living entity individually needs to understand Krishna. Vedic literature confirms this. Yo so sarver veder giyate. In all Vedic literature, beginning from the four Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, and the Upanishads and Puranas, the glories of the Supreme Lord are celebrated. By performance of Vedic rituals, discussion of the Vedic philosophy, and worship of the Lord in devotional service, he is attained. Therefore, the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. The Vedas give us direction by which to understand Krishna and the process of realizing him. The ultimate goal is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedanta Sutra 1.1.4 confirms this in the following words: Tat tu samanvayat. One can attain perfection in 3 stages. By understanding Vedic literature, one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By performing the different processes, one can approach him, and at the end, one can attain the Supreme Goal, who is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, the purpose of the Vedas, the understanding of the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas are clearly defined. So we'll begin with the prayers. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavasya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Runathamitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhamritamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyatya Visharadine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. today we'll be going over just a summary of chapter 15, and that verse we recited comes towards the later part of the chapter 15, but it was a very important verse that we will be giving extra focus upon today. So I'll just begin by giving a breakdown of what is covered in this chapter and from where we are coming. So before chapter 15 was chapter 14, and the title of which was 3 Modes of Material Nature. And the discussion from chapter 14 to 15 is showcasing how Krishna explains that these 3 modes of material nature actually binds the living entity to the material world. And to get out of the material world, we must take shelter of the Lord to surpass. And the only way to surpass the material world and to surrender unto Krishna is through bhakti. Because by bhakti, our propensity to enjoy the material world will decrease. So there's one caveat explained in chapter 14 towards the transition, that we cannot just do bhakti and still be attached to the material world. If we're doing bhakti and we're not being able to gradually detach from the material world, then it is not effective. Which is why Krishna is telling us in this chapter on how to cut our attachment through the sword of detachment. It's like, a person trying to travel from somewhere. If your feet are in 2 boats, you're not gonna go anywhere. Nor the material, nor the spiritual. Nothing will go right. So we focus on our spiritual life and gradually detach from our material attachments while doing our duty, while making sure that we don't get too engrossed, we don't overdo it. So that is the essence of this chapter, that verses 1 through 6 talk about detaching from the material world. 7 through 11 about transmigration of the living entities. 12 through 15 appreciating Krishna's position as our maintainer. 16 through 18 give a summary of Vedas and Vedanta. And lastly, 19 to 20 talk about how knowing Krishna means knowing everything. So now we'll kind of backtrack, verse 15.1, if you can pull that up. Shri Bhagwan Vacha Urdhvamulam Adhashakham Ashvatham Prahuravyayam Chandamsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavid. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. So Krishna is beginning this chapter with an analogy, and throughout the Bhagavad Gita we see that there's many analogies to explain the philosophy. So here we are told that there's a tree that is upside down. So how can there be a tree that's upside down with roots going up and branches going down? Any thoughts? How can a tree be upside down?
Reflection.
Yes, exactly. So only through a reflection can the tree be shown upside down. There's no other way that we can see it upside down. And that's what does a reflection indicate? The reflection indicates that it is unoriginal, that it is just the substance of something else, not an originality. And here Krishna is giving this example to tell us that you are just in the reflection of all the opulence, all the beauty in the spiritual world. There is nothing in the material world. This is actually just but a reflection that was lost in translation. So the meaning of ashwatham in this verse is that which will not exist tomorrow. So this material world is not eternal. The happiness in this material world is not eternal. We are of course not eternally meant for this material world. Therefore Krishna is using this particular word. And this reminds me of one story on how basically there was a town, and this town had a traveling circus, and everyone was very excited. Everyone told all the neighbors, everyone in the village went to this traveling circus. There was a huge buzz about it. And so everyone gets into this line. There's this one specific ride. Everyone is waiting, anticipation of what is going to be in there. And so first person goes in thinking that, yes, it's going to be the time of my life. It's going to be the best thing I've ever done. I've waited for this for years, days, whatever. They go in, and they are pranced upon by 2 wrestlers. And now this person's fighting for their life. Now they don't know how to get out. So fighting, they somehow escape and they run out. And so they go out, and the next person is standing there with a huge smile, asking, how was it? How did it go? Wasn't it amazing? I'm sure it was amazing. Now this person who comes out just facing, seeing death in front of his eyes, thinks to himself that, oh man, like if I go tell him that it was this and that, it was so terrible, then they're gonna think I'm a fool for waiting in this line for so long, for waiting for this for so long. So better I tell them that it was nice, it was amazing, it was the best thing that's ever happened to me. So then he tells him that, yes, just go, it'll be amazing. Second person goes in. Same story, same things happening. He comes out and he also thinks that, what do I tell the next person now? The previous person said it was great. If I say that it wasn't, then everyone's going to think I'm a fool. Everyone's going to be disappointed why I waited for so much time. So this kept happening and happening and happening. And basically the lesson from this was that these people were, it's like the material world. We're in the material world, and it's a place of struggle, and it's a difficult place, and we know that, but we're still trying to make these things look all glamorous, all, my goal, what are your goals in life? Oh, I want to climb up the corporate ladder, I want to this, that. It is, even though we know all the struggles behind it, even though we know how much it's tainted, it's not what it seems to be. So in such a way, that illusion, that wrong message is passed, and everyone is thinking that, oh, we're going to enjoy the material world, but never trying to enjoy it, never getting the enjoyment in the material world. So we're seeking the right thing, we're seeking happiness, but we're seeking it in the wrong place. Because Krishna mentions in the later part of this chapter that you're not meant to be there. Everyone's actually my part and parcel. And once you come to this eternal spiritual world, you will never have to go back. So, now coming to some parts of this tree, I know the visual representation would have helped a little bit, but I'll try to explain as best as I can. I apologize if I'm not able to deliver the message like that, but the branches are explained to be different planetary systems. So this tree is nourished by the three modes of material nature, and all these modes are in different parts of the tree. So the higher parts of the tree is the higher planetary systems, middle, lower, etc. And the fruits of these are dharma, artha, kama, moksha, which are the activities of the living entity, which keep binding us into the material world. And the medium of reflection is desire. So, like we talked about, this perverted tree will not exist unless there is a reflection. And the reflection will not exist unless there's a desire. So if there's no lake, if there's no river, then the reflection of the tree is not there. But as soon as the desire comes, then this tree is there. And so one very important thing to note from this chapter, Krishna is trying to explain, is that this material world is the exact replica of the spiritual world, in the sense that everything is being replicated from there to here. However, just like in a reflection, the quality is degraded. I cannot put an apple in the reflection and enjoy it through the reflection. Similarly, just like, if someone takes a photo and I try to send it through WhatsApp, the quality is going to go down, right? So just like that, everything in the material world is just lower quality, very minute, very temporary. Even if we get happiness, it's very temporary. And the topmost thing in the spiritual world, the top thing in a reflection is the bottom. The top in the original is the bottom in the reflection. And the bottom in the original is actually the top in the reflection. So that showcases how the top thing, most looked for in the spiritual world, which is Krishna Prema, is so looked down upon here because people are not willing to seek it because we're so conditioned. And so the twigs are the sense objects, and the tips are the senses. So those senses come in contact with the sense objects in that cross. The secondary roots, which are going downward, are known as represent attachment and aversion. So the more attached or aversion, love or hate that we have in excess in this material world is actually just binding us. And so here Krishna is asking, Arjuna will ask that, why should I try to understand this tree? What will I get? So Krishna is explaining that by understanding this tree, can we cut by the weapon of detachment and go to the spiritual world. And one acronym I heard from His Grace Radheshyam Prabhu on how actually this process of detachment works is that we cannot just detach, of course, right? Attachment is there naturally in this material world. We're always going to be attached to something or the other. So his, I guess, 3-step process to this, he said, is detach from material activities by attaching to Krishna and have the mood of servant of the servant. So that acronym is DAS, detach, attach, and servant. And so after attempting to cut this tree of this material world, we seek the higher spiritual planets by attaining which we never have to come back. We never have to come back again. So many glories are explained of the spiritual world that it is, every word is a song, every step is a dance. Here, we are only happy to the degree that we are dissatisfied. If we think about that for a second, if someone is really thirsty in the desert looking for water, if you give them a bottle of water, they will feel so much more relish as opposed to someone who is already, their thirst is satisfied. So the degree to the, as strong as dissatisfaction is, then that happiness comes in. So happiness is basically dependent on dissatisfaction here. Whereas in the spiritual world, happiness is eternal. There's no, you don't need to be dissatisfied to become happy. There is no such thing like that. It's all a beautiful place of everlasting joy. And how can we go to the spiritual world now? How can we detach? The key mentioned here is that we cannot find Krishna on our own. We need to be in association with those who also have that same desire. Just like if a student has a desire to become a surgeon, for example, and he starts hanging out with people who go party, go waste their time, go do random things that he's not going to study, he's not going to do anything, he's just going to get influenced in that, and his goal to becoming that is never going to be fulfilled. So similarly, our spiritual goals are also like that. We associating with those who also have the same desire will accelerate our progress to Krishna. And as such, we will be able to talk more about Krishna, think more about Krishna, and automatically we will be able to detach by attaching to Krishna and attaching to devotees. Just as how going into the sun automatically dissipates darkness. You don't need to do anything else to dissipate that darkness. So now the next question here is being asked by Arjuna is, so who can surrender to Krishna? Now you're telling me surrender, but who? So then the verse is given, Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha adhatma nitya vinivritta kamaha Vanver vimukta sukha dukha samne gacchantya mudha padamavyayam tad. So some key qualities are being mentioned on what qualities so that we can surrender to Krishna. So Krishna says false prestige and pride, illusion, false association, dualities, and material lust are some negative qualities that will keep us from surrendering to Krishna. And this, one of the key qualities being told is pride. Obviously, if we think that we are really amazing and great, then we will never want to surrender to anyone. So once we realize that actually Krishna is providing for everything, actually we're just minute in comparison to him, then we can think to surrender to Krishna. Then that thought to even surrender can come. And that's the aspect of humility. So humility is not necessarily to think less of ourselves, but to think of ourselves less. And that can only happen when we think more of Krishna. Then automatically we don't need to necessarily think of ourselves. And there's so many ways to think and be grateful for Krishna. And one example given, there was one man who once fell sick. He had to go to the hospital. On the hospital, he was put on the ventilator with an oxygen mask, struggling for his life for a week. And he comes out of the hospital, somehow recovers. A while later, he gets his hospital bill, and there's thousands of dollars on his bill for an oxygen mask. So this person starts to think that God has been giving me oxygen for my entire life, and I didn't even say thank you. And now I'm realizing how priceless, how much God is doing for us that is, He's in the back end. He's not even in the limelight. This is all behind the scenes stuff that He's doing, which we will talk about. So what is the spiritual world? Krishna explains in this verse. It is Tadhama Paramam Mama. It is the supreme abode. Beyond this, there is nothing. This is the most supreme. This abode is not illuminated by sun, moon, fire. It is only illuminated by the Lord's effulgence. And upon going there, we do not return. So that Krishna is giving us these qualities for us to get that desire, that inclination, so that we can come to Krishna. And as such, Krishna gives many indications in our life too. So Krishna will give the glories of the spiritual world, but also show us all the negatives of the material world. There's a quote by His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj in a book where he says, "A comfortable prisoner does not have the passion for liberation." Very powerful quote. I felt that sometimes we all struggle in the material world. That by definition is the material world, but that is Krishna trying to tell us indirectly that, hey, there's something above. There's a place where you can be eternally happy, where you don't need to keep chasing and keep getting disappointed and getting upset and dissatisfied. So as such, that is explained in this verse. So now from verses 7 to 11, Krishna is talking about the transmigration of the living entities. And so Arjuna may ask, why do we come to this material world? Why did you even create this in the first place? Because of desire. Like we spoke about, that desire was there, which created the reflection because we wanted to enjoy. We wanted to enjoy separate from Krishna. But this enjoyment is not even possible without the Lord's sanction through Prakriti. So Krishna gave us the place to enjoy, to satisfy our own senses. That proves how selfless the Lord's love is to us. And He's saying that we are eternally, Mame Vamsho Jiva Loke, everyone is His eternal part and parcel. And that doesn't mean that when we say part and parcel of Krishna, it's not like a piece of paper and then you cut it into pieces and the paper is gone. We are just parts of Him. He is still whole. Despite all the planetary systems, all the avatars, everything coming from Him, He is still whole. There is nothing that is subtracted from Him. We are just spiritual beings with a human experience, not human beings with a spiritual experience. And then in this verse, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains further on Somsha and Vibhinamsha. So Somsha is Krishna's primary expansions, and Vibhinamsha is us, we are secondary expansions. Therefore, we are not equal. When we say expansions, we're not equal to Vishnu Tattva's avatars. We are not at all equal to that. We are just eternal servitors of the Lord, not like that. So, real satisfaction will not come here because our nature is eternal, but this material world, this material body is temporary. So then how can one transmigrate? How does that work? So Krishna explains then that transmigration happens with a person carrying conceptions from one life, one body to the next. Just like air, Prabhupada explains in his purport, this analogy that air might be going from the rose garden to somewhere else. It'll carry the aroma of the rose garden, but that doesn't mean it identifies with the fragrance of the rose. It is still pure in nature. So those conceptions are just being carried. Just like that, we are just carrying conceptions of the material world. But we are eternally Krishna's part and parcel, and we do not belong here. But our journey in this material world, we still have the choice. So between B and D comes B and D comes C, yes. A, B, C, D. So between B and D comes C. Choice. Birth and death and comes choice. So we have that choice in this body to decide, do we want to go to Krishna or do we want to stay here? And that's why Krishna gives us minute independence. He never, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna never told Arjuna that A, B, C, D, go do this. Done, khatam, period. Point blank, period, done. No. He says, this is what you can do, this is what you can do now, you decide what you want to do. So similarly, Krishna has given us the choice to do what we would like to do in this material world. He's not he of course, if we turn to him, he will welcome us with open arms, but he's waiting for us to make that choice, to make that conscious decision. And just like that, then further, Arjuna inquires that we are suffering again and again and again in this material world, but why are we not realizing? And Krishna then explains is the only thing that can help us realize is jnana chakshu, the knowledge through shastra. Knowledge, and that can be given by Guru. So as mentioned in the first verse that the purpose of the Vedas is to attain Krishna. The purpose of Shastra, the purpose of these scriptures is love of God, not Ashtanga Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga. The ultimate, one can know all the Vedas, but if one does not know the Krishna through those Vedas, then they don't know anything for that matter. So that Shastric knowledge is needed for us to understand the purpose of this material world. And just like that, then basically the bottom line of this chapter is devotional service. That is the bottom line. That is the only thing that'll... Krishna says surrender. Krishna first actually says cut the tree with the weapon of detachment. Now how to do that? Surrender unto me. Now how to do that? By trying to seek Shastra, to get that knowledge, associate with devotees and do devotional service to help us surrender and thus get out of the cycle of birth and death. And so now in the next few verses, 12 through 15, Krishna's explaining how he cares for us, but in ways that we cannot see. So behind the scenes, Krishna is doing so much that we're just not able to see. And once we realize, then it will help us a lot. So the question comes up, right, from the previous verse, he's saying Shastric knowledge. Now, this particular section Krishna is explaining for, if one asks that, oh, I don't have Shastric knowledge, I cannot acquire Shastric knowledge. So then, what to do without Shastric knowledge? Then Krishna explains how he cares for us at a cosmic level. So I'll kind of quickly cover this, but 4 examples given are the sun, the moon, fire, and how he enters the material world, how he enters all planets' orbit to give balance. So without the sun, we practically cannot survive. We cannot get healthy food. We cannot get good health. The water cycle won't work. There's so much more. Without the moon actually nourishes the vegetables. So when we think that where's all the juice and all the nourishment coming, that's from the moon. Fire, we cannot cook without fire. And beyond that, Krishna says, I am fire of digestion. And sometimes we forget about our stomach until it stops working. So Krishna is explaining here how this also is my mercy. The sun is also my mercy. The moon is also my mercy. Not only does Krishna give us the fruits and the veggies and the beautiful things that we can eat, but he also helps us digest. So Krishna is facilitating for our enjoyment also, not just, even those, Krishna's Manusyanam Sahasreshu, Kashyadhyatati Siddhar. Out of many, one comes to him. But what about everyone else? Does Krishna just forget him? Does Krishna just neglect them? No, Krishna is actually providing for everyone, for giving everyone the facility to enjoy. He enters every planet and ensures it's in orbit. If tomorrow Krishna was taken out of the picture, then everything would be completely gone, the planets out of orbit, nothing would be working. So the bottom line here is realizing that we physically cannot even exist without Krishna. And without Krishna's presence, our lives are zero. So God gives, forgives, and we get, and forget. So just like that, this chapter is kind of a reminder of how Krishna works behind the scenes to also give us so much just for our sustenance. So the key verse of this chapter, Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto matta smritir jnanamapohanamcha vedesya sarverahameva vedyo vedanta vidveda videvachaham. So Krishna just talks about how he maintains us at a cosmic level. But beyond that, he's maintaining all of us individually at at a personal level. So we think that our desires transfer from body to body. How are they transferring like that? Who records? Who knows what desires are there? Krishna is actually in our heart. He is noting down personally every desire that we have. And here Krishna is showing how even for the devotee, for not just the devotee, for everyone, he becomes a servant. He's actually becoming a servant for Arjuna, for his friend. He became the charioteer. Arjuna was kicking him on the back. He was kicking the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the controller of the three worlds, has all opulences, is now getting kicked on his back. Not just like a small, tap, like he's getting kicked in war. So, many instances where Krishna becomes a servant, and just like that, in all of our lives, he's recording all of our desires, and he helps us remember those desires, and not just that, he gives us the knowledge to fulfill those desires. He also aids us in forgetfulness. So what is there to forget? Our past lives, for example. If someone went through something really traumatic in their past life, if someone went through a car accident, now that trauma is going to be there for the whole lifetime. In this very lifetime, we have so many things that trigger memories, that make us uncomfortable. And imagine now if we had to remember everything from all the past lives, it would be chaos. So Krishna is doing us a favor by helping us forget those. And even in the bound state, he is helping us in so many ways. And then Krishna says, I am to be known by scriptures. And the essence of scriptures is to just know Krishna. And the essence of that essence is Bhagavad Gita, which is the words of Krishna himself. So the Lord has given scripture, but the first step to understand scripture, to understand his words, is just to have faith. And once we have faith, once we believe that whatever Krishna is saying here is supreme, then we can try with the association of others to implement that also into our lives. And Krishna says, I am the compiler of the Vedas and I know the Vedas in full. So just like that, this one of the key verses of this chapter, Krishna is explaining how he is taking care of our desires too. And one very, very important thing to remember here is that if we want to remember Krishna, Krishna will also acknowledge that desire, and he will also give us the knowledge to remember Krishna. So it's the biggest, what is the biggest anga of devotional service? Greed, desire, loyalty. And if we have that, Krishna, obviously there's tests, and it doesn't come just like that. Even Narada Muni perfected his life. He had no more perfection. He was at the perfection of his Krishna consciousness, but still Krishna told him that you will not get my darshan again because you have this, and this problem. You have to take another birth, and then Narada Muni accepted. But that doesn't mean that he was impure. So just like that, if we have that desire to remember Krishna, Krishna will facilitate for us to be able to do that. And that's why, like atheists, for example, or those who don't believe in God, they have the desire to not believe in God, and Krishna will give them every reason to not believe in him now. We may think, how does that work? But the bottom line is the desire. Once we have, those who have the desire, Krishna will show in many ways his presence. And I'm sure we've all experienced that in our lives, that we can try to see Krishna, and just even our daily activities, like, oh, this happened, that was Krishna's mercy. And that's, I guess, the bottom line of this, that desire, Krishna facilitates for that. And so kind of coming to the end, I'm sorry, it's almost time. I think it's past time. I'll just quickly cover it. This last few verses are talking about the essence of Vedanta. So verses 16 through 18 are known as Trishloki Gita. They talk about our sambandha with Krishna. And this actually whole chapter is like the essence of our philosophy. It talks about sambandha, avideya, prayojana, talks about the material world, spiritual world, everything. So what is our sambandha with Krishna? There's two types of living entities, and we are infallible living entities here in this material world. Who is supreme? Paramatma is supreme. Krishna is supreme. There's no one above Krishna. He maintains everyone and everything. And there's the key truth, the bottom line of these three verses is that there's no one who can equal or surpass Krishna. And our true actual ego, our true identity is the eternal servant of Krishna. So nobody here or in the spiritual world can be equal or can be independent of the Lord. And in the material world, we're kind of taught to take pride in like our externals, like, you know what, some of the first questions someone will ask you is, what major are you? Where are you working? So then naturally, we're so conditioned to be like, oh yeah, I'm a this major, like I'm working here, I'm in this college. But it's the fact of the matter is that there's always going to be someone better than us materially. There's always going to be someone who graduated with a better degree, always going to be someone who is prettier, always someone who has more strength, more knowledge. But spiritual teachings help us, remind us that our eternal, actual identity is the servant of Krishna. And that is where our ego lies, in the fact that we are actually so close to Krishna. We are loved by Krishna so much, and we have so much love for Krishna that is just waiting to be awakened. And then the next couple of verses talk about Abhideya. So what is that process of attaining Krishna? The process is just bhakti. That is the only thing we can do. Bhakti fulfills everything, no other obligation, nothing else that we need to do if we're doing bhakti. It's a one, that's just the only, of course Krishna gives so many alternatives for those who are not ready to do bhakti, but by doing that one thing, you're watering the tree and all the roots, you're watering the roots and the whole tree is satisfied. So how we do bhakti, we're all practicing devotees and doing regular chanting, hearing, associating, and just like that, Krishna will help us gradually to come to Him. And it's a very gradual purification process, just like that. And one quote here, I'll just read, it's by Srila Prabhupada in the purport of this, that there are many philosophical speculations about the constitutional position of the living entities and the supreme absolute truth. Now in this verse, the Supreme Personality of Godhead clearly explains that anyone who knows Lord Krishna to be the Supreme Person is actually the knower of everything. So one need not to know anything else if we know Krishna. That is the ultimate. There's nothing more to know beyond knowing Krishna. That is the beauty of our scripture, that it gives us so much facility, so much details to be able to know and fall in love with Krishna. And that is all glories to Srila Prabhupada for giving us that medium to do this, because imagine you were told to fall in love with like a light. Impossible. How do you go, like, how do you do anything with that? But we're told, we're given so much beautiful descriptions, so many pastimes of the Lord, so many beautiful things, so many reasons and connections we can make with Krishna to actually make Him our first love and eternal love. So, of course, prayojana, last point, is Krishna Prema. That is the prayojana, and through bhakti, through gradual purification, we will be able to achieve that prayojana, and we will be able to make this life the last life. Because why keep wandering? Why keep detouring? Why keep thinking that, the person in the circus who is like, oh, it is going to be great, and trying to convince ourselves or trying to convince the next person that this is going to be great, it's not going to be great. Bottom line, point blank period. Like Srila Prabhupada said it, our scriptures say it, Krishna says it Himself, and therefore we're very, very grateful that, just to think of even the fact that we're able to sleep at night knowing what is next, what could our next life be, where are we to go? Because there's so many people who have no idea on that. There's so many people who, are constantly wondering, what is this life? What am I doing here? And Srila Prabhupada has given us this facility to be able to understand Krishna and ultimately cut this material world with that weapon of detachment. And that pretty much concludes the summary of this chapter. But just one last thing Krishna says through this chapter and throughout the Bhagavad Gita, that He just, think of me. He keeps saying, think of me. So why does He say, think of me? What? Any idea why He says, think of me? There's one particular specific thing I heard, that Krishna is asking for our mind and our heart, because that mind and heart is stolen by Srimati Radharani. And just mentioning this in light of Shri Radhashtami, which is coming up this Sunday. Radharani is the epitome of love and devotion to Krishna, and of course with our sadhana and with our practices, we can try to progress, but ultimately, by the mercy of course, Guru Gauranga, we cannot. But Srimati Radharani is very, very, very merciful. She will literally, she's looking at us in the spiritual world and telling Krishna, look at this person. He or she is doing so much more than me. Please accept them. So when we just pray to Srimati Radharani, I think that's also one of the bottom lines of our philosophy, that prayer and begging for the mercy of devotees and of, especially Srimati Radharani. She's so merciful. So that pretty much is just my short repetition of what I've heard from senior devotees, my Guru Maharaj, and the scripture. Please forgive me if I said anything that was incorrect. Please correct me, and I seek your blessings so that one day I can also apply this into my life. And thank you all so much for tolerating me. Hare Krishna.
Next question, we will take one question. So I can answer the question. So some devotee might think that, I'm doing so much, Krishna should take me back to Godhead. I'm doing so much austerity, so much charity, so many things. But how can we see that? Who decides?
Who decides whether we go back?
Yeah, I am thinking that I'm supposed to go back to Godhead. Because I'm doing so much austerity, I'm so much tapasvi, so much service, so many things I'm doing. So.
Prabhuji knows the answer to this question, but I can try to attempt. I think one of the biggest, from what I've understood, all the devotees who were qualified to go back to Godhead thought they were unqualified, and we can see that in, for example, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's Sharanagati. In the end of all of his Sharanagati prayers, he's saying, "Oh, I'm so fallen, I am so this, please accept me, at your feet." He's saying so many things that we cannot even imagine that, if we think that if he's there, then where are we? That's Bhaktivinoda Thakur, right? Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So, my understanding to this is that a devotee once qualified does not think qualified. Just as how if someone is humble, if they say oh, I'm humble, then it kind of contradicts, because then it's a but alongside that, Krishna just keeps testing and testing and testing until all that pride is removed, until we think that, oh, I'm so unqualified. Like I mentioned, Srimati Radharani herself says that I am so unqualified. Krishna, these gopis are serving you better, these devotees are serving you better. So I think that is the point at which one is actually qualified, when they think that they're unqualified, and if that kind of makes sense. But please, I know you know the answer to your question, so if you can add, I don't want to...
That's fine. So with loud Haribol, please, thanks Ananga Mohini.